stop everything. Because at dawn, with 3 ice-cold words, the monarchy didn't just respond, it detonated. Stop it, Meghan. And just like that, the silence of a winter morning shattered into constitutional thunder. What followed was not a family disagreement, it was a sovereign strike. A silver USB drive in the steady hand of Princess Anne became the most dangerous object in the Commonwealth. A tiny metal weapon allegedly tying a controversial $3 million transfer to a Dubai financier under Interpol surveillance. And in less than 3 minutes before cameras on February 24, 2026, the Princess Royal rewrote the rules of royal warfare. This wasn't about bruised feelings. It wasn't about interviews. It was about control, bloodline control, narrative control, future control. In a briefing so clinical it felt surgical, Princess Anne confirmed the resurrection of a dormant post-war mechanism, an emergency royal guardianship protocol that had not been activated since 1952. A constitutional ghost dragged out of the archives and polished for modern combat, renamed, reinforced, assigned directly to Archie Harrison and Lilibet Diana. And with that, the crown did something nobody believed it still had the appetite to do. It claimed absolute authority over the upbringing of royal minors deemed at risk of identity commodification. That phrase, identity commodification, is the dagger. The palace publicly rejected vicious online rumors about bloodlines, yet refused to entertain theatrics. Not science, not spectacle. They framed it as humanitarian necessity. And Princess Anne went straight for the psychological jugular, invoking the 1990s slurs that haunted Prince Harry's childhood, the poisonous paternity rumors that nearly fractured him before he was old enough to understand the cruelty. Little Copper, a nickname that echoed through school corridors and tabloids alike. The palace message was unmistakable. There will be no sequel starring his children. But beneath the moral argument was something colder: strategy. Palace insiders whispered about a supposed 3-tier desperation play: provoke the crown for attention as lifestyle ventures stumble, leverage custody uncertainty for financial leverage, retain exclusive licensing of the children's image for future media gold. If that was the plan, Anne allowed phase 1 to explode, attention, but she seized phases 2 and 3, because once the protocol activated, the timetable belonged to the institution. And then came the mechanics. This wasn't ancient parchment waved in nostalgia. The charter was fused with modern international law, the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, the Hague Abduction Convention. At 9:12 GMT, alerts were pushed to U.S. authorities, not requests, notifications. Within 90 minutes, American passports were flagged under protective notice. Translation? These were no longer simply California children. They were matters of state. Princess Anne stood flanked by Prince William and Sophie, what insiders dubbed the tripartite shield. 3 pillars were unveiled like steel doors slamming shut. First, a global freeze on commercial licensing of the children's likeness until age 18. Any streamer, brand, publisher daring to monetize would face sovereign litigation. Second, genealogy escrow, sealed birth records moved to a vault at Sandringham, accessible only to the children in adulthood. Deny gossip, neutralized. Third, jurisdictional override, foreign civil rulings unenforceable in the UK without the monarch's consent. It wasn't PR, it was reclamation. And then the USB. Because while headlines focused on guardianship, the palace allegedly aimed at the oxygen tank, money. The silver drive reportedly contained documentation of a $3 million wire transfer in late 2024 routed to Meghan from a Gulf financier under surveillance. Consultancy retainer receipts. A term sheet for something called the Crystal Marina Project promising a 10% net profit share in exchange for Western Royal Halo product strategy. Private yacht images. Monetization conversations. If authentic, it wasn't just embarrassing, it flirted with anti-bribery scrutiny and foreign registration rules. And why risk it? Because behind Montecito's manicured hedges, the numbers allegedly screamed. A $9.4 million bridge loan against the estate at punishing interest. Default looming. A Delaware holding company accepting cash infusions from an investor flagged by Interpol. The palace didn't have to publish the USB. The existence of it was leverage enough. Freeze the children's image rights and you freeze the collateral fueling future deals. Studios reportedly pulled back. Analysts slashed projected lifetime brand value. A commercial excommunication. The moral frame made it lethal. Princess Anne wasn't screaming, she was preventing. She cited the trauma of a 12-year-old Harry suffocating under tabloid cruelty. She banned commercial theatrics outright. The identity of the children was declared national heritage, not episodic content. And Harry? Friends described a man suspended between continents. American legal counsel warned him about residency optics. British duty pulled him home. Reports say he sought spiritual counsel from the Archbishop of Canterbury, but the the real earthquake arrived in a Santa Barbara courtroom, a sealed affidavit signed by Harry, not challenging the protocol, acknowledging it as lawful and proportionate. That moment wasn't theatrical, it was surrender to gravity. Children over brand, financial pressure tightened, credit complaints, account freezes. And then the interim order, transfer into UK diplomatic custody. RAF Voyager on standby. Wheels up. Princess Anne stopped the countdown timer only once the aircraft cleared American airspace. The USB moved to sealed archives. Siege over. No fireworks. No gloating. Just cold finality. Polling spiked in favor of the palace. Humanitarian framing triumphed. The files remained sealed as deterrent, not spectacle. And here's the part nobody can ignore. The monarchy didn't win by shouting. It won by owning the clock, by shifting the fight from trending hashtags to iron law, by reminding the world that while celebrity runs on attention economics, sovereignty runs on jurisdiction. The red digits stopped glowing, the vault locked, the reset executed. And just when the world thought the storm had passed with the wheels of that aircraft lifting off the Los Angeles runway, the real aftershock began. Because removal is one thing, reckoning is another. The monarchy did not simply retrieve two children, it rewrote the power equation of the 21st century in front of a global audience that had grown addicted to royal melodrama. The flight across the Atlantic wasn't just a journey, it was a symbolic reversal of exile. 6 years earlier, California had represented freedom, reinvention, independence. Now it represented collapse, containment, and consequence. And as the RAF Voyager sliced through the night sky, something else was dissolving at 35,000 feet, the illusion that celebrity leverage could overpower constitutional gravity. London did not greet the moment with pageantry. There were no brass bands, no staged balcony optics. The return unfolded under gray Oxford skies, controlled and clinical. Archie and Lilibet stepped into a system that had prepared for this outcome down to the minute. Pediatric specialists from Great Ormond Street had already established transitional health protocols. Educational placements were pre-cleared. Psychological safeguarding teams were briefed. This wasn't improvisation, it was architecture. The palace had anticipated every move weeks in advance, constructing a humanitarian runway so meticulously that resistance would appear reckless by comparison. Meanwhile, thousands of miles away, Montecito fell silent in a way that felt unnatural. No strategic leaks, no counter briefings, no late-night exclusives hinting at their truth. The machine that once moved at influencer speed appeared jammed. Talent agencies, already wary after the image freeze, quietly suspended negotiations tied to any narrative involving the miners. Audio deals stalled. Production treatments evaporated. Even sympathetic columnists hesitated because the optics had shifted. This was no longer framed as a woman versus an institution. It had been reframed as children versus commercialization. And that framing was nearly impossible to fight without looking ruthless. The alleged Dubai connection hung in the background like a sealed indictment. The USB drive, never publicly deployed, became more powerful in silence than it ever could have been in release. Palace insiders understood something the digital age often forgets. Deterrence is more devastating than exposure. By keeping the content sealed, the crown maintained moral altitude. They did not humiliate. They did not prosecute publicly. They simply let the possibility hover, a constant reminder that escalation would not be one-sided. Harry's arrival in Britain 2 days later was quiet, almost penitential. No red carpets, no dramatic embraces staged for cameras. He was escorted into Windsor for what sources described as a structured debrief, part legal orientation, part institutional recalibration. The man who once positioned himself as a bridge between continents now stood as a case study in divided loyalty. Yet something had shifted in him. By acknowledging the guardianship protocol rather than contesting it, he had created a narrow corridor back into paternal legitimacy. Not unrestricted freedom, that door remained guarded, but supervised reintegration. The crown, for all its steel, had left him a path. That was not weakness, that was strategy. In the United States, financial tremors intensified. Credit complaints gained traction. Wealth managers distanced themselves. Lifestyle branding partnerships that once depended on aspirational proximity to royalty now faced an unworkable legal reality. You cannot market proximity to something that has been legally withdrawn. Investors craved stability. Sovereignty had just proven it could outlast publicity. Public opinion proved decisive. Polling in the United Kingdom reflected a surge in institutional support, particularly among younger demographics previously previously skeptical of royal relevance. The clarity of the child-first argument resonated in a way palace public relations rarely achieved in previous crises. The monarchy had not defended itself. It had defended minors. That distinction altered everything. Internationally, legal scholars dissected the emergency guardianship protocol with fascination. Some debated its constitutional elasticity. Others praised its modernization through international conventions. But even critics conceded the precision. The fusion of post-war precedent with digital-era realities signaled a monarchy unwilling to be cornered by streaming platforms or algorithmic outrage. It had studied the battlefield and chosen law over spectacle. Back inside Windsor, the silver USB drive was transferred into archival custody, not destroyed, not paraded, preserved. A sealed contingency. That choice sent a message louder than any press conference. The Crown does not need to detonate every device in its arsenal to prove it has one. As days turned into weeks, the phrase royal reset began appearing not just in tabloids but in policy discussions. The episode had effectively created a new doctrine. Royal minors are not narrative assets. They are constitutional wards first, family second, brand never. That line may define the next generation more than any coronation. For Meghan, the landscape narrowed. Litigation loomed. Debt restructuring conversations intensified. The influencer era model, monetize access, weaponize mystique, negotiate from public sympathy, collided with an institution older than modern finance itself. Reinvention would require separation from the very imagery that once powered relevance. That is not a simple pivot. It is an identity crisis. And yet, the Crown avoided theatrical triumph. Princess Anne did not schedule interviews. Prince William did not deliver victory speeches. Sophie did not engage in moral grandstanding. The silence was intentional. Because the monarchy understood something fundamental, endurance outperforms noise. The psychological dimension cannot be overstated. By invoking Harry's childhood trauma and anchoring the intervention in prevention rather than punishment, the palace reclaimed narrative ground that had slipped away years earlier. The message was disciplined. This ends here. No more tabloid paternity whispers. No more speculative monetization arcs. The cycle stops with this generation. Archie and Lilibet's future will unfold under a different sky now, structured, guarded, undeniably institutional. Their American heritage was acknowledged in official statements, an olive branch woven into the reset. But jurisdiction, timetable, and final authority reside where they have for centuries, with the Crown. The saga will continue in quieter forms, legal filings, financial negotiations, personal reconciliations still unresolved. But the explosive chapter closed the moment that aircraft vanished into Atlantic darkness. The USB remains sealed. The vault remains locked. The reset remains irreversible. And somewhere in Windsor, a princess who once watched her nephew suffer under the cruelty of speculation ensured that history would not repeat itself. Not on her watch, not in the digital age, not while the throne still writes its law in iron.